I've heard this term floating around: zero pixel tracking,
or as you call it, zero pickle.
Zero. I know I did say that right before. Man, I'm full of it today with everything. Zero pixel tracking. And I like that term, and it's something we've actually talked about, but we didn't have this catchy term for it. But let's take a step back and talk about the problems with iOS 14, 15, and upcoming 16, I believe, and why that's relevant. So what problems did iOS 14 put in place that everybody freaked out about as advertisers?
Well, basically, you just couldn't track as accurately anymore, and there was just so many targeting options taken away, so much data collection taken away, the reporting's way off, and because of that does impact advertisers' spending, the confidence of how well your ads are doing. Mm-hmm. A lot of it can be psychological if you're not looking at your actual numbers, and just change. And people hate change, and I think iOS really put advertisers, businesses, marketers in a tough spot, at least for a little bit, because of how everything was done in the old days, right? Mm-hmm. With the wild west of targeting and tracking and just plugging. There's just so many more steps now you have to do to try to get cleaner data. Yeah. So that's basically what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know people tend to dislike change, or change throws people off. But especially in the advertising world, I feel like when change happens, it's a huge opportunity to level up, because some advertisers are not going to put the extra effort in to learn learn the new way things are working, right? Yep. Live in the new world. And so they're going to fall behind, and new, advertisers that are willing to be a little bit scrappy and try new things and whatever can tend to get ahead. Yep. So one of the things, zero pixels. So I guess I'll talk really quick about the pixel, just to give people a background and why zero pixel is even a thing. So how it used to work is you could install this tracking pixel on your website. And the tracking pixel was literally just a 1x1 pixel image. A lot of people don't realize that. That's all it was. But when the browser would load that image, you could also append some additional data, like which click ID they used when they clicked on the ad, or the browser ID of the person. Or if you've previously identified that person, you could even pass their email address and some other things back into Facebook's system or Google's system or whatever. And so you could connect the dots between data and events that happen outside of Facebook. We'll talk specifically about Facebook. Outside of Facebook, you could connect the dots with what happened with a specific Facebook user and some things along those lines. And that was great for advertisers, because we could track this person was actually the person that bought this thing. This person in Facebook world was the person that bought this thing over here. You could report that back. Your ads reporting was nice. You could see how much you spent, how much you made, the dollar amount, how many sales you had, or how many leads you had, and it was great. When iOS 14 came around, they said, we are going to block third-party tracking. And what that meant was any stuff that happened outside of Facebook, they're going to block reporting that back into Facebook. And it's a data privacy thing. In the grand scheme of things, most people probably wouldn't be okay with how much data collection Facebook was doing at the time. Maybe not even be okay with how much data tracking they're doing now. But it was good for advertisers. So when they did that, mobile devices make up, I don't know, on most websites I look at these days, I would say mobile iOS devices make up probably 50 to 60% of the traffic.
I was going to say 70%.
70% on
many sites. As high as 70%.
And it's higher when that traffic came from Facebook, because something like 90% of users that use Facebook use it on a mobile device. Right? And so so the tracking just went through it, just hit right into the concrete. It was terrible, and everybody freaked out. Facebook kept promising they're going to have a good way to handle it. Google was like, we've been through this rodeo before. We've already got this figured out, but Facebook freaked out, and a lot of advertisers freaked out, and the game completely changed. But you've said before, it was so good back then that it kind of made advertisers lazy.
Yep.
They could just rely on, campaign tricks and things and make money.
Yeah. Just basically have just like maybe you have a good offer. You didn't have to do much to make it work because, quite frankly, the pixel would do a lot of the work for you. So people could get away with just like throwing up an image, a couple words, get some really dialed in targeting, and start making money, and that's it. And essentially, the iOS 14 changes have impacted that particular advertiser. One who didn't do the research, understand sales, understand ad copy, understand a good offer, having all those in place, and those are the ones that panic the absolute most. And I think with the challenges with the iOS 14, and me being a media buyer, I would constantly have to explain why the numbers weren't going back into the ad account and talking about essentially the good old days, right? Like, yeah, I used to run these ads, and I would get fill in the blank 7x return on my marketing, and now I'm only getting a 3, right? And they would kind of measure the success on past old campaigns where it's kind of like measuring different things, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, just because you got A's in first grade doesn't automatically mean you should be getting A's in 12th grade. You still have to do the work. You still it doesn't carry over, right? And so you have to adjust and get better each and every way of the journey. So that's basically what I would have to always explain is, yes, it used to work that way, but it no longer does, and we need to adjust to that, because if you get stuck in that mindset, you can put yourself right out of business because you're just like stuck in the old days. Like, imagine if you just kept thinking like, no, I want reality to be newspapers at my front door every day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to learn how to use a computer or a cell phone or send text messages. I don't want to do that because I liked how it used to be.
Yeah.
Imagine where you would be today.
Yeah.
Jobless.
Yeah. Sorry, I keep going back to the kindergarten grades versus 12th grade grades and just thinking about coloring in the lines of what you did in kindergarten to get your good grades.
Yep.
In 12th grade, coloring in those circle bubbles just fine. They might not be the right circle bubble, but at least you stayed within the lines. It doesn't. The skills don't necessarily transfer. Right? You got to keep up with the times, and so yeah, it threw everybody through a loop. Now let's talk about what zero pixel tracking means.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, the way I would. So really, what this is zero. What is it? Zero. I can for some reason zero pixel tracking.
Zero
it's difficult to say. Really, what this is a matter of you're not using the pixel or over relying on the pixel to do most of your work or the tracking or any of that. You're actually using things that are going to happen inside the app where the data is a little bit more accurate. So, for example, before we hit record, Blake was talking about video views, right? You can optimize for video views within the platform and then retarget the people who've watched 80 or 90 or 100% of that video. And that data lives within Facebook. And that can't get lost because Facebook is in charge of that, correct?
Yeah, and it's part of the terms that you agree to when you create a Facebook account. Yeah. And periodically they'll send you an email saying, hey, we updated our terms.
Which we all read, right?
Yeah, I don't read any of those. I just assume that they updated their terms to be able to collect more data on me, and I either need to be okay with that or stop using Facebook.
Yep.
But that happens within there. So there's literally nothing that Apple can do to prevent, or Google, or whatever device you're on, to prevent Facebook from collecting data that happens within their app. They have every right to do that. There's no legal issues with that. There's no the big issue was data from some other source transferring back into Facebook and allowing Facebook to be this massive data collection company. But if you're inside the app, all of that data is fair game. So the old way of running a campaign 4 or 5 years ago, and this still works. Like, this isn't an old way. You see people do this all the time. Was to run a campaign, drop people on a landing page to get a lead, and then you follow up via email and a retargeting campaign based on the page views on your website. But the retargeting campaign, the audience that makes up that campaign, had to be created by pixel data.
Yep.
And with iOS blocking pixel data, you
miss a
can
lot
still
of it.
run that, but you're just not going to get anybody that viewed your page with iOS 14.
Yep.
So you might still get the leads, and you might be able to still email them, but they're not going to show up in your retargeting audience.
Yep.
But now you can run a campaign with some sort of in-app retargetable data
Yep.
and build your retargeting audiences based on that.
Yep.
And those can be video views. Those can be on Instagram. That can be business profile visits.
Yep.
Interacting with posts.
Yep. Lead gen.
Lead gen,
forms.
in-app lead gen, right? Because Facebook has their in-app lead forms.
Yep.
So they don't have to leave it. I'm trying to think of other ways. Like, I know there's
Well, you got post engagements. You've got, clicked on ad. You've got, you can do combinations of these. The biggest, the favorite one, a lot of advertisers use is the video views.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Because you can track how far people have watched the video and just speak to the ones that if someone watched 100% of the video, they're probably more qualified than someone who watched 3 seconds.
Right.
Right. So it gives you a form of qualification when you do this. So, and in-app is great. The other people who message your business, that's another one.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, messaging. That's another one, yeah.
So, this is a great way to, if you do in-app, one technique I used to use a long time ago, it's funny as I kind of come back around, was optimizing for messages, for people to send you a Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
Responding to your ad, and then you go back and forth with them and then get them on the phone and then sell them. And I think there's really not that much of a difference between, and you let me know, because this is where your expertise comes in, but it feels like when you optimize for different objectives, for years, people have always said, under no circumstances optimize for anything else but conversions, right?
Right.
And I guess the logic was that if you optimize for purchases, it hits a different part of the audience, that target audience, than if you used a different objective, right? Sometimes I wonder, though, if we've lost that data from the conversion side, does that actually make everything kind of more fair game? Because if you lost 80% of your data, then that targeting capability is not the same, right?
Yeah.
But I always found that optimizing for messages worked just as well as optimizing for a lead that then I just try to book a call and talk to them on the phone.
Yeah.
Given you have a structured follow-up process.
Yeah.
And that's just been my experience. And I even used the engagement objective and the messaging objective. And many times, actually, the engagement objective worked better than the messaging. So you always want to test it. But that's kind of my thoughts. What are your thoughts about the algorithm hitting different segments of that audience, and how is it impacted now versus in the past?
So my guess, and I would love to kind of keep an eye on this over time, is that optimizing for conversion, if your conversion happens off-site, off of Facebook.
Yeah, your own website.
If it happens on your website, optimizing for conversion is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse results over time. And the reason it may not have happened right away is Facebook still had a lot of conversion data, right? Yeah. It's historical data. But that data gets stale. It becomes out of date and gets moldy and old and over time. But if let's say you have an audience that's 100,000 people and you're optimizing for conversion, what Facebook is trying to do is say, okay, which of these people, which 5 or 10% of this audience is ready to convert right now based on their past behaviors?
Yep.
But if a lot of their past behavior data is now dark, you can't get that past behavior, then they're going to have a harder time identifying the 5 or 10% of that 100,000 person audience that is ready for conversion. And how they could track what's ready for conversion is, say I have an offer for a freebie that's like the 5 best marketing strategies for podcasts.
Yep.
And Greg over here has been signing up for podcast guru over here's
Yep.
email list,
Yep.
and this podcast person over here, and Pat Flynn, I know he's great. I love his
Yeah.
stuff, but he's got a podcasting course, and you sign up for his freebie over there. Well, Greg is really ready to
Yep.
sign up also for my free podcast, freebie. And so they can clearly identify that Greg is hot. He's ready to convert.
Yep.
Good to go. He fits in that 5% audience. But if they lost all of that data from all these other advertisers
They don't
because
know.
the pixel's not tracking, Facebook no longer knows. And that data that they have on conversions is old.
Yep.
And so that's why I think optimizing for conversions is probably going to get worse and worse and worse over time, which kind of sucks. It was nice that we could just tell the algorithm, this is the thing we actually want. We don't need to beat around the bush. We can just tell you and be very direct. We want a conversion. We want a purchase, or we want a lead form sign up, and optimize for those conversions. But now it's like, we've got to kind of hint that that's what we want. We've got to use other signals. We've got to feed other signals into the algorithm to tell it these are the types of people that we're pretty sure are going to convert.
Yep. And
obviously we got to test that to see which ones are actually converting, and then say, okay, we want more of these people.
What about in-app? It seems like the cost per action in-app is always cheaper. Like the traffic is always cheaper than the conversion or off-app data, right? At this point, with the changes, do you think it's possible that if you choose the conversion objective and it has less data, that you could get a better result using a different objective targeting the same, assuming the audience is exactly the same, simply just because there's more data on the in-app versus off the app? Because in my mind, it always feels like when you optimize for conversion off app, the CPM, or the cost for the traffic, is much higher than when you do it for inside the app.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that exact same thing as well, that the CPMs are always higher for some sort of offline conversion or offsite conversion than it is for some sort of in-app or in ecosystem conversion. As far as why, I think a lot of it has to do with just the incentives that Facebook has, or Google. We say Facebook a lot, but or Google, any of them, the incentives they have to keep people inside their app. So think about it this way: say you're now Facebook, and your job is to increase the profit of the company. Every time someone leaves our app, that's an opportunity that they won't come back. Okay. And so I think they all want to incentivize advertisers to say, hey, let's do everything inside our ecosystem, keep you here, because if someone signs up using a lead form in ours, in our app, they're not leaving our app, and they'll keep scrolling when they're done, which means they'll see more advertisers, and which means we'll make more money. I'm not necessarily saying that's a good thing. I'm saying that's where the incentives are for Facebook to behave. And that's the playground we need to play in. Because if we're going to play in Facebook's sandbox, we got to play by their rules. And unless you're a government agency, you have zero say on how Facebook sets its rules.
Well, let me ask you, here's a question. What about, my theory was also, a lot of people are going for conversion, specifically towards very popular audiences. Does that bid get higher because it's more saturated with people versus using another bid?
Yeah, I would. Now that you say that wasn't something I thought about, but absolutely. I mean, we've talked about that, and in general, the people that are optimizing for conversions are willing to pay higher, pay a larger, pay more money for those conversions. I know with running, if we skip over into Google and we start talking about search ads, there's a whole methodology of keyword research. Which keywords are going to be the ones that are going to get the conversions? And frankly, for me, one of the best things I always did, and that seemed to work, is I would put in keywords, I would sort them based on the average bid, and I would choose the highest bid amount and bid a little bit higher than that. And because those were the keywords that were converting, the reason people were paying high dollar amounts, $20, $30, $40 a click, a click on those is because they're buying. Those people are buying.
Yep.
And when you have a higher priced offer, this particular client that I'm thinking of here had an offer that the starting price was $1,200 a month. $30 a click is nothing if your conversion rate is high. And for the right people, their conversion rate was really high once they signed up on the form, and they had a good follow-up process and everything. So it was great for them. Their ROI was insane because people would sign up for this $1,200 a month, starting at $1,200 a month, and they would stay with them for years and years and years because it was a service.
Well, I think so. Bidding in different parts of the auction makes a difference, right? And I think within app, you really should test it because you can get a lot of value. I know, at least for me, I've always felt like, I guess other people talking about bidding strategies and stuff like that have always made it sound like if you do in-app, it's like garbage traffic. Like Facebook is giving you like the lower quality traffic. I'm not always sure that's the case. I've run a bunch of campaigns with engagements and video views and stuff like that, and I've seen, like, I pretty much back check like to see who's watching or clicking it, and it seems pretty much like the same type of person that I want to go after anyways.
I think that stems from people's misunderstanding of the numbers they're seeing, and I guess let me put it this way: so you're optimizing for conversions, right? Your CPMs are higher. Let's say your CPMs are $10 per thousand. That's pretty high for a CPM. Now, depending on your offer, whatever. $10, and so you get a click through rate of 2%, whatever. You get a conversion rate, and once people land on your page of 2 to 4%, whatever, and you're thinking, that's pretty good. I'm making my sales. I'm paying a lot, but I'm making sales, and I'm profitable, and that's pretty good. And then you have, say, an engagement campaign or a video view campaign. Well, your CPMs are, I don't know, $2.
Really low.
like way 1/5 what you were paying before. And so for the same dollar amount, you can get 5 times the traffic. But then your click through rate is 0.5, and your lead sign up rate is 1. And so they're like, this is just garbage traffic. But the thing is you were able to reach 5 times the number of people with the same ad spend, and your end result might actually be more profit because you were able to reach out to more people. And so it's easy to just kind of write that off as garbage traffic, but the reality is well, of course the other traffic was better because you were paying 5 times the amount for that traffic. But this traffic could be more profitable because the numbers are working out, but because the percentages are smaller, you're thinking, that's garbage traffic. I'm not wasting my time with that traffic.
Something that Molly Pittman said that caught my attention last week, and they're very successful in scaling campaigns. In fact, I would pretty much say that's their specialty, is scaling. She had mentioned, though, she was like, well, you can't always bid for like that final event forever, meaning not like you stop it, but like there's only a certain percentage of people in market to purchase today. So when you're scaling, she was talking about you have to have other strategies that aren't like optimizing from, she specifically said from ad to product page. She's like, there's only so many people who will see the ad and convert on product page at certain budgets. Eventually, you'll burn through that audience, and you'll have to optimize for lead opt-ins and put them through a funnel or put them through content and convert them that way, which I thought was interesting because you almost never hear anyone talk about that. But I take their word for it because I know that they spend huge amounts of money scaling campaigns. And to me, it makes sense because you're like, well, if I had a 10 million audience and I'm going after purchases, I can't spend unlimited because if it's only 5% of the audience at any given time and I'm spending $1 million a day, eventually I would have tapped out that audience. And so but there's more buyers in there. Maybe they're just not in market today.
Right.
And that was interesting. That was interesting.
That's what a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons I like a lot of Molly's stuff. People don't realize that these audiences are fluid.
Yeah.
Right? When I say this audience has 1 million people in it, and they're thinking, aha, there's 1 million little Gregs and Blakes and whoever's in there. But at any given point in time, people are leaving that audience and they're joining that audience. It's that audience is like this bucket of attributes, and there's a stream
like water.
of people moving in and out this little section. And yeah, water's a great place to do it. Like you have this fishing hole, right? And the river's going down. The fish can swim upstream or downstream, but they're coming into this hole right here at this point in time. There's way more fish in the river.
Yeah.
But this part,
there's only like 3 or 4 of them that come through this section.
Yeah, that are ready, that are hot today to bite.
Sometimes there's 3, and sometimes there's 0.
Right, and so if you think about it too, you also have people that are in that hole right now, but they just ate.
Yeah.
They're not hungry.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. They're in the market.
Yep.
But right now at this instant, they're doing something else, and that something else could be, driving my kids to soccer practice or whatever. And so what you need to do is think about this more holistically, which we talk about all the time is holistic marketing, but think about it holistically. Going back to what I was saying earlier about the cheaper traffic, the one thing that's hard to measure, almost impossible to measure, is you reached 5 times the amount of people with the same budget.
Yep.
That's 5 times the amount of awareness, which means that next time they see one of your offers for something, this or that, they're way more likely to click on that. And everybody thinks about the end event. That's what Molly was talking about. You can't always just optimize for the end event. And so having something where you are basically, back to the river analogy, upstream, you're basically find some way to whisper to the fish, there's some real good food down there. Just
Chum
get
the
hungry.
waters, maybe.
Don't eat. Don't eat right now.
Yep.
Don't eat here. You need to be hungry when you're down there, because that's where the good food is, right? And so you're basically telling people, hey, you know what? There's good stuff coming up. Get familiar with things, and then when they are ready, they're ready. But people sometimes take time. You have people that are fast, people that take a few weeks, people that take a few months.
Yep.
And so you have to kind of think about that holistically.
And I think
I was going to say that's why probably a lot of your campaigns, we've talked about this before, where you have an engagement campaign, a conversion campaign, a retargeting campaign, a video views campaign, and maybe none of those are actually spending thousands of dollars a day. Maybe this one's 10, this one's 5, this one's whatever. But when you have them all together, you seem to be making way more sales, even though inside of Ads Manager, none of them seems to be doing that great.
And that's like, for me, like personally, like my business, I always have multiple types of those campaigns running at any given moment, using reach, engagement, video views, and conversion all the time.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, content marketing. The reason is because for me, I understand that I'm in this for the long haul, and I know not everyone's ready to buy immediately. I get a lot of people who reach out and say, hey, I've seen your ads and I watched some of your content for like a year now.
Yeah.
And then they purchase. But if I just like stopped any efforts because it wasn't like that person didn't sign up like right away, then I would have never gotten them. Plus, over time, I like to look at it just as marketing momentum, like a machine.
Yeah.
Over time, it builds up and becomes easier and easier, just like content marketing. The first day you start content marketing is the least profitable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But over time, it starts to compound. Because if people have seen you for years, your conversion rates are easy, people are ready to buy. But it's very easy to kind of look at, well, if I put something out today and didn't get it, and in our high impulsive world now, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Versus looking at it like, this can be a process. This is going to take time, but if you stick with it, your results will be much better. But that's mostly where I think pixel data and stuff like that really almost train the minds of everyone to think even more impulsively than we already do, right? Yeah. Because it's like, hey, we've got this tool that can get you a sale today. You can put an ad out and get a sale now.
Yeah.
And trust me, I love that too.
No, it's great.
Right? Like it's a great thing to have. But I think what that also trains you is to think that's how it should be always. And you almost get spoiled by that. You almost think like, well, if I put $1 out now, I should get $5 back now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many times? How many times did 4 or 5 years ago was the advice put out 10 campaigns,
Yep.
and then you just turn off those that aren't converting.
Yep.
Within 24 hours,
Yep.
and then got to the point. Well, you need to give it a couple of days.
Yep.
Still, that's really impulsive. You
Yeah.
actually need to have
a couple of days. Think
Yeah.
about that. Are we
Yeah.
building a business in a couple of days?
No, you're not. It's like you've got to have this kind of overarching strategy, and none of this has to cost, hundreds and hundreds of dollars a day. You shouldn't be spending hundreds of dollars a day unless you have already tested some things and they're working. You've scaled up.
And
to
you
that
have
point.
a good strategy.
And a good strategy for follow up for your whatever. But yeah, I want to shift gears just a little bit before we finish this one off.
Yeah.
There's one other pixel free, 0 pixel free, pixelless data point that we haven't talked about that you've had quite a bit of success with.
Yeah.
That's offline events.
Oh yeah, offline
Yeah.
events are great,
Mm-hmm.
and I do believe that they have stabilized a lot of the ad accounts since the iOS 14 change, and they work great simply because, and I don't even know all of like the technicality of it. I just know it works great. Where you just download the data from your store or your CRM system, wherever you're collecting it, and then re-uploading it back into your ads manager. I don't even know the correct name, the offline events manager maybe.
Yeah.
And then what that does is it matches the data back to be able to see if that person was online, saw an ad. And my assumption is that they're using probability. Is that how that kind of works?
Yeah.
I don't even know how it works
Yeah.
completely. I just know that it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's kind of two different ways to do offline data, and Facebook calls it offline data, but they also have their conversions API. But to take a step back, how both of those work, and I actually think if you have the capabilities to do both, you should do both.
Yeah.
But how the offline API works is, I have a store, you come to my store, you buy, but as part of the buy process, you have to put in, your email address,
Yep.
your phone number, your physical address,
Zip code,
zip
city.
codes, all of that stuff, and then you buy. But now I have that data. I can download a spreadsheet of that data, the Conversions API takes that data and uses a programmatic way to push that back into Facebook to basically say, here's the name, email address, phone number, address, zip code of this person. And then Facebook tries to match that data with what they know about their users and say, okay, cool, this was Greg.
Yep.
The offline event data is very similar, except for that you essentially manually download a spreadsheet of that, and then you manually upload that spreadsheet. And it seems like the exact same data, but I feel like every time I've seen both be turned on, the results are better. So who they're trying to figure out who that stuff is, it has a lot to do with probabilities, right? Because there's multiple Greg Marshalls out there. I don't know if there's some with the same zip code or whatever, or maybe you've never given your address and zip code to Facebook, so they don't know that you're that Greg. And so they will apply a probability saying, we're pretty sure it was this person. And once it hits a certain confidence level, they will attribute that in your ads manager.
Well, I think one of the key pieces to this is why I said if they're using probability, is the time of purchase. Because that seems to be a data point that if you upload into offline events makes a huge difference. And that time of purchase, that's where I think they use probability, because then they're like, this is his full name, this is the city he's in, this is the time that our system sees that he was on, while also this purchase happened around the same time.
We see that he clicked on this ad at this time. And, a minute and a half later, we get this purchase event with someone that has the exact same name, same zip code, same whatever. Yeah,
so
definitely.
that's where I think the probability part comes in, is the time,
the time
that it was purchased, because then that really narrows it down, right? Because it's like, if there are 10 Greg Marshalls all in the same city, all using Facebook, but there was a purchase made at this time and I was on at this time in this particular city, then I think
that narrows it down a lot.
It kind of makes it to where it's like it most likely was him. Right. So I think offline data is very useful. Using as much data as you can to like help feed your accounts, I think, is very useful, because from the technical side, I feel like it probably does help optimizing, because it's giving the machine more data to work with versus 80% less. And I found that with the offline events, it just seems to stabilize things. Like there's not as much up and down, it feels like. And that's just been in my experience.
And that's like, this is where we kind of come back to basics. I mean, we've talked a lot about messaging in past episodes, and this one, we're talking about these old school tactics that kind of fell out of favor once the Pixel got so good. They're now coming back, and you're using these old school methods. It almost feels like we're moving back into the direct mailing age. You know, the Mad Men age, Dan Kennedy, where you're focusing on these foundational principles of psychological selling, basically using words and things to do things, and then doing some rudimentary data analytics, i.e., uploading a spreadsheet. Like how old is that? That is, but we upload the spreadsheet and it gives us more consistent data.
You just made me realize from having us talk about this. Really, all offline events is the same as like back in the day when you would, maybe you're running a direct mail campaign and you sold 25 people. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, so I sold 25 people. Where do these people come from? And you're really like, you're using Facebook almost in the same sense that you would use just your own brain back in the day, where you go, well, I had these 2 campaigns. This person, it sounds like they saw this offer instead of that one. Mm-hmm. So that probably came from direct mail piece A. Yeah. This one came from direct mail piece B. Mm-hmm. And you're just kind of like mapping it together to figure out, all right, it looks like these campaigns worked. Yeah. I spent $2,000 and I got $8,000 back. Fantastic.
It worked. Maybe we run another test to target the ones that we felt like worked best to see if we can confirm that creative or geographic area was hot, and try it again. But that's really not a lot different. And it's probably going to get more and more like that. We have all these fancy tools. There's a lot of businesses out there that are trying to solve this data connection problem automatically. And all of that. You've got Hyros, you've got all these others. But the thing is once all of those get big enough, they're going to also get on Apple's hit list. Yep. So they will work for a time until they get big enough, and then Apple will be like, nope, that's third-party data getting over to here. You flew under the radar for now, but now you're on our block list. And then it will stop working. Yep. But a good old-fashioned spreadsheet. Yeah.
Where it's, customers. It's your data.
It's your data. I own that data. I'm giving it to my advertiser to connect the dots. There's nothing wrong with that.
So I think outside of that, using in-app tracking can be very helpful. I would recommend testing and using it, especially if you're someone that's thinking about being in business over the long term. I think it'll be very valuable for you to utilize it. And one thing that I think works really well when you do a lot of these kind of in-app or downloading spreadsheets and stuff like that, I think it's useful to help the business owner or marketer truly understand their business better, because you're not relying on a machine where you're not even looking at it. You're like almost forced to really analyze things and go like, why did this work? Who are these people that are clicking on this? What are they doing? I feel like it almost forces you to research your own company better, which is more effective, I think, just for your own good. Of really understand. At the end of the day, all marketing and businesses is understanding your customer on a deep level. Yeah. And being able to speak to them and give them what they need. And I think by doing these techniques, it helps you understand that better, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's wrap it up. Yeah. Greg, how do people get in touch with you?
GregMarshall.co. You can go ahead and book a free strategy session. What about you?
BlakeBuse.com/SM3 is the best way to get in touch with me.
So until next time, we'll see you later.
Okay, bye.